Hi, I'm Sonia Sapaban. Thank you all for joining us today. This is a four-part series. The first three webinars, we talked about the overall concept of the three Ps to get better results faster in diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. Then we talked about two of the Ps, the process and the professional guidance that you need. Today, we'll talk more about the last P, which is for platform. In a moment, we'll quickly review what the three Ps are, but you can see also our recordings of our previous sessions on our events page at ouroffice.io/events. So first, a little bit about us. I'm CEO of our office, where we provide an end-to-end solution, which works especially well for small and medium businesses who want to improve DEI. I started my career as a NASA engineer. Later, I was an executive at Fortune 500 companies, where one of my other duties as assigned was to lead our DEI efforts. All team members at our office have similar lived experiences trying to improve DEI throughout their careers. In the last 3 years, we've been working together, applying the three Ps, and partnering with our customers to build more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplaces with amazing results. So now, before we get into the meat of the conversation, let's make sure you're familiar with the webinar tool we're using today. This is a 30-minute interactive webinar. Please use the chat function at the bottom of the screen to ask questions or provide inputs throughout the webinar. We'll answer as many questions as we can with time that we have left at the end, and we can also answer them afterwards, as long as you provide your email address when you put your questions in the chat. Lastly, please note this session is being recorded and will be available after the webinar on our events page. Again, that's ouroffice.io/events. So let's start with the agenda. Here we see we're going to first start talking about the problem. What's the problem with DEI in terms of implementing it and improving diversity, equity, and inclusion? Then just a reminder about the three Ps, which is the approach we take. Then I want to just talk a little bit about, generally speaking, why do we need technology? You might think, DEI, workplace culture, has a lot with people, and we have too much technology in our lives already, so why do we need technology for DEI? So we'll talk about that for a moment. And then give you a definition and some of the categories that are emerging in what's called DEI tech, or diversity, equity, and inclusion technology. I want to share some buying considerations. If you're in the market trying to select a piece of software or a tool, something that could be referred to as DEI tech, what should you consider? And then we will talk about the core capabilities you should be looking for as you do that in more detail. And then at the end, hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. So let's get started. First of all, what's the problem? Well, the problem is the current approaches are not working. There have been people trying, organizations, workplaces, leaders, trying to improve DEI for a long time. But we see still that the cost of employee turnover due to failed diversity initiatives is billions of dollars. One estimate shows $64 billion. There's a lot of productivity loss, about $450 billion per year, it's estimated. And BCG did a study. They do this study every year, and the latest one we saw says that over 97% of organizations have DEI programs, but 75% of the targeted employees say they don't benefit. So these are problems. And some of the underlying problems that lead to these, what are observables here, is that a lot of leaders, a lot of organizations don't know what to measure for DEI. 67% say that they don't know. Leaders say that they really need DEI benchmarks, and to see where they stand and what they should improve. And that's a top challenge. And also, when there are DEI leaders, either they're part-time or they don't have budget. And of course, a lot of organizations don't have a DEI leader. So it's hard to improve things when no one is leading it. So what's the solution? The approach that we take is the approach that we take to address really any business problem. We think that we can help address the problem if you think of it holistically. What does that mean? In a holistic approach, you're not just looking at a few quick actions, like let's do some training or just focus on recruiting. Instead, you look at all the ingredients of success that are often needed for any business process, what we call the three Ps. the process, the first P, the person who can provide professional guidance, that's the second P, and the platform, the last P. In the last 3 years, again, we've been applying this approach, and we've seen it deliver results faster than you may think, sometimes in a matter of a few weeks for organizations of all sizes of industries, including small and medium businesses, iconic brands, public companies, and nonprofits who see great results. So today, again, we are focusing on the last P, the platform. So as I promised earlier, let's talk about technology in general. We use a lot of technology in our daily lives. Here are a couple of examples. The cars we drive typically have about 10 million lines of code in their software. Scary, right? And if you look at luxury cars, sometimes they have many more. It's been reported on the order of 100 million lines of code. On average, we each use 9 apps daily. Apps are just pieces of software that we use. And it's reported that on average, we all use about 30 apps per month. So what does all this technology have in common? Why do we use them? Well, technology makes our lives easier and better most of the time. And if used, of course, responsibly. In one or more of these ways that are listed here. A lot of times technology automates and accelerates our repetitive tasks. It's used for easy access to information. Just think of everything we can Google these days. We get useful insights from data. Just think of when you're driving your car, how much information is available to you right there on your dash. It frees up resources for other tasks. And also, it provides really 24/7 real-time visibility, which is not possible in any other way. So really, technology is a good thing, and in many ways has improved our lives and made it really possible to do many things. So it makes sense that we use technology for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that is what we call DEI tech. More specifically, DEI tech has been defined, actually, was first time, I think, defined in the 2019 timeframe by a report that came out. And it called it, as follows. They said DEI tech is a new class of enterprise software that supports the organization's efforts to become more diverse, equitable, and inclusive. So some of the ways that this enterprise software helps support the organization are shown here. These are different categories of DEI tech. So let's talk about each one of them. Analytics is a top one, right? It's a broad category which will continue to remain critical. As they say, for anything to improve, you got to measure it. So analytics is just that. Analytics is data that you use in a way that is really shedding some insight, where you can get some conclusions or some, something that you can actually take an action on. The second category is career development and advancement. This includes, of course, training, mentorship, career development, performance, succession management, and so on. There's some tech that's emerging for helping you with that. And then engagement and retention. Again, this is, for a long time, people have used surveys, but we have a category emerging that is really expected to grow with a focus on belonging. How do you really make people feel like they belong? How do you improve empathy and trust and understanding? So that's what this category is about, and it's really expected to grow. And then last but not least, you can see it's actually the largest category here. It is talent acquisition. We all have been using this for some time. It's where you really are using technology to, throughout the hiring pipeline, starting with selecting candidates, finding them, contacting them, and then so on and so forth, throughout the process of interviewing and making a selection, and then making even the offer. So as we talk about it today, because we have limited time, we'll focus on the first three, because there's already a lot out there, and most of you are using technology for talent acquisition. Also, talent acquisition is more about diversity. And today, what we find is that what's more challenging for most is how to achieve equity and inclusion once they have put focus on hiring candidates with diverse backgrounds. So these are the categories. We're going to focus on the first three. Let's, for a moment, before we go on and talk in more detail about each one of those, let's talk about what are some of the selection criteria. What should we be looking for if you're in the market or if you're thinking or planning that sometime, maybe in 2022, you'll be looking at some DEI tech to help you. So first and foremost, you got to be careful because there's a lot of tools and resources out there, and pretty quickly you can end up with a piecemeal approach where you have different tools for different things, but no underlying kind of system or process to connect it all together. That's really super important. When you look at a piece of technology or software of any kind, really, you have to ask yourself, what kind of an underlying process was assumed or is necessary to make the use of this tool really successful and beneficial for you? You want to make sure for DEI tech, and this is in the context of DEI tech we're talking about, that it's a safe environment, because this is not like everything else, right? You got to be careful that what you're buying will have the features and the ability to give all your team members the sense that it's a safe place. Otherwise, it will not be very useful and people will not use it. Of course, the user interface has to be easy. That's a must for any tool or software these days. You want to make sure that there's enough controls. Yes, you want transparency, you want engagement with this kind of software, but you also have to make sure that there's controls after all. So what is called role-based access is pretty important. And then, of course, there's data privacy and security is always a concern. You must make sure of that when you're buying a piece of software or tool. Just ask some questions. It's easy. It doesn't have to be hard how to figure out some of these criteria. And then at the end of the day, this is about changing culture. So you want DEI tech tools and software that have embedded in them aspects of sharing and collaboration. And of course, last but not least, in any tool or software that you buy, is to have adequate customer support. You can't just buy a piece of software. Always ask about what is the support, who will be there to answer your calls. Will there be a person, or is it just some chatbot? Those are really important. And of course, the cost, so that it fits in your budget. Now that we have talked a little bit about these considerations, hopefully you'll see some of these sprinkle through as we talk about the different capabilities that you must focus on and make sure that you have as an underlying foundation for your efforts in and the use of the DNI tech. So each of these key factors to consider, we'll have some examples along as well, but just to summarize here, it needs to really start with, when you think of DNI tech, is see if you can look for any tool or software or technology that can help you with sharing your DEI plan. A lot of people have plans, but those plans are not necessarily shared. They're not visible. When you ask people, even best in class sometimes, you say, okay, we know that you're pretty advanced and you have a DEI plan, but what are your key objectives and actions? And people not only can't remember them off the top of their heads, but also they can't really easily go access them or find where the latest version is and what everybody is doing towards it. So that's what we mean by a shared DEI plan. The second one, of course, is data-driven insights. This is super important to address your gaps and opportunities and be able to track progress. We talked about safe environment as a buying consideration. Certainly, that's a key capability that you need to look for. This is important to build an inclusive workplace. You need to promote trust and empathy, and there are tools emerging that help you. And then last but not least, a lot of times we talk to, again, best-in-class organizations that have DEI going on for some time. Sometimes there's a new leader or a new employee, and it's very difficult to access the resources and the information and what all is being done across the organization. So it's very important that you have some tool or some ability to make access to resources and information easy for everyone that needs to access it. So a touch point, for all the different use cases and needs. So again, these are the 4 areas we'll focus on in terms of the core capabilities to look for before you go and really focus on some unique or narrow use case tools and sources. These are really the ones that will help you jumpstart or take your DEI efforts, if you have some going on, to the next level. So let's talk about each one in more detail, okay? All right, so the first one we talked about is shared DEI plan with objectives and actions. Now, what's critical in this, right? What are some of the capabilities you want this tool or a piece of software to help you with? We have here, of course, on the right-hand side, we have an example of our Office platform and what we provide, right? This is an example of a, of an action that is identified here. And what you want to be able to do is look at this action and kind of quickly see, if it's linked with a strategy, because that's what makes it sustainable. Make sure that it's easy to access this, right? The broad visibility is what creates alignment. If there's a bunch of objectives and actions, but nobody can access them and it's not broadly visible, then it's hard to get everyone to kind of row in the same direction. You also want it to be easily accessible 24/7. You don't want it to be something that you have to go talk to someone else or when you have time, but something that's really at everyone's fingertips that they can easily go in and look at. Because people have different work schedules, especially these days, we're all sitting at home or doing some hybrid work. So people have, at different times of the day or week, might have, some time available, and it's important for them to have access. You want shared accountability, the ability to kind of see what everybody is doing. What we have found with our platform is it is really a really important factor for getting everyone engaged and getting everyone to get ideas from each other and support each other in taking actions towards the same objectives. You want them to be actionable. Of course, you need due dates, assignees, and then a progress indicator. Here you can see on this example that we show here, there is a progress bar. That's, again, pretty important to see where everything is at. And then also, sometimes people don't know what actions to take. There may be some great objectives there. They're linked with strategy. But, I want to do something and I'm not exactly sure what action I can take. So again, on our platform, we do provide, a list of recommended actions that at any time, and these are indicated with actions that are high impact, medium impact, and maybe lower impact, depending on how much time and resources you have available. Now, how this manifests itself when you look at, examples of objectives and actions, here we give you a few examples and then showing how many actions people are taking towards each one. So your tool, as ours does, needs to be able to indicate to you, what the objectives are, how they're linked with the strategy, and what actions people are taking. And then, of course, on the right-hand side in the pie chart, we show, a sense of how many are in process, how many are completed, how many are not started yet. This makes for a complete solution in terms of, having a DEI plan that is shared, that is visible, that is actionable, and that really makes a difference in the organization. Some of the examples you can see here, for example, increase diverse talent hiring into customer support roles by 25%. This, for example, is linked with an underlying strategic priority of the organization, which is to improve customer experience to a net promoter score, that's what NPS stands for, of greater than 30. Another one is improve diversity of mid-level managers in business development roles by 10%. This supports, the strategic priority of the organization of market expansion to minority communities. And last but not least, another example is just increasing participation in DEI events, in partnerships and sponsorship opportunities. This is, supporting or linked with the strategic priority of the organization, which is to build an inclusive brand to attract and retain talent and customers. So hopefully this is a good overview of what we mean by, having a shared DEI plan with objectives and actions, and a tool that helps you promote that and implement it across the organization. Let's go to the second capability we talked about, data-driven insights. There is a lot of tools out there. There's some business intelligence tools, there's some human capital management systems you have, or applicant tracking systems. They all provide some level of analytics. What is really important here is that you look for a tool for DEI really to make an impact that has a comprehensive set of what we call key performance indicators, or KPIs. Again, at any time, you don't need to use, for example, we have 50 of them. on our platform that are predefined. You don't clearly won't be using all of them at any given time, but over time, you will use a subset of those as you need to for your particular objectives and actions as your DEI journey evolves. The key categories that we focus on, the first three are ones that I think are more familiar and most people measure to some extent is representation, the hiring pipeline, compensation, but then you really need to also focus on growth and development. How are your processes and policies and benefits supporting DEI or not? How are they scored? Do you have any idea how they compare with your industry benchmarks? And then generally business and culture, how some of the DEI factors may be related and affecting or correlated at least with some of your business priorities, like your return on investment or your return on capital, your revenues, and so on, as well as just your overall workplace culture. How do some of these specific metrics relate to or correlated with some of your engagement survey results? So this is what's really important. Here we show a couple of examples, for example, of in the area of Black and African American, for example, hiring pipeline. Right? As you look at this, you can see that we're showing the hiring pipeline with the applicants being the one that the applicant diversity being the one that's shown as a purple line here at the top, and then you see the percentage of Black African American in the interviewee slate, and then last, how many are hired. So this is an example of being able to look at it over time. And then another one that maybe not too many people look at is, again, looking at your processes and policies, an ability to score, how's your leadership diversity and how does that correlate, for example, with work flexibility rules that you have that will actually help you attract more diverse talent. So as we look here, this is an example where as your leadership is more diverse, they make decisions that make the workplace more flexible for everyone, which in turn, of course, will lead to having better representation, better ability to hire diverse people with different needs. So these are just a couple of examples. There are many others, of course, that we can talk about, but it's just indicating the kind of in-depth and comprehensive analytics that you want to look at so that you can really do some correlation connecting the dots. The next one here is an example, again, of just other characteristics you want to look for. Drill down, slicing and dicing by seniority levels, by BLS standard operational codes. The ability to share these. Again, here you see on the right-hand side, a female representation by seniority. We have the overall, we have first-line supervisors and mid-level. It's really important to look at it structurally like this, and then to set goals. So you want a tool or a piece of software that allows you to also set goals and track progress. And then you want one that is flexible enough to accommodate organizational change quite easily. And, as you look at this, some of you may be thinking, well, this seems pretty complicated. That's where that other P comes in, the professional guidance. So again, on our platform, all of this is possible, but we also have the professional guidance, your DEI advisor, who actually can manage the whole platform for you, or you can get into it and play with it yourself with a few clicks. So this was the second core capability. Now let's go on to the capability of providing a safe environment. What is really important, a lot of people say, oh, we have Slack or we have Microsoft Teams or we have another way of communication across the organization. All of those tools are intended for work. What is important here is to have the intentionality and provide an environment that's built for authentic conversations around DEI and culture. What this really helps do is get people engaged who typically would be very hard to engage, those that are underrepresented, those that are not comfortable. It needs to be available as you wish. You can do it by invite or by letting all employees opt in. Anonymity for such a tool is extremely important. People to be able to anonymously share or provide responses or feedback. This is super important for psychological safety, which we'll talk about on November 3rd, actually, on our next webinar. Of course, it provides insights, the voice of employees in real time. It gives leadership really a way to connect with the organization. And also the onboarding is really improved with this because it can differentiate and build instant loyalty with new hires. Last but not least of the capabilities we want to talk about is access to resources. Again, we find some of the best organizations we work with say that, for months, a new leader comes on board, a new employee, and they're looking for, what are we doing? What are the initiatives? What are some resources or best practices? We provide on our platform a comprehensive menu of 10 categories where you can keep all of your corporate knowledge, all the resources, everything in there, as well as some recommendations that will come your way to help you with some vetted and selected resources. It's important to be able to share and export these, filter them, and generally it really just helps save time. So these are the 4 capabilities that are really important for us to focus on. Let's look at what does that mean overall when we put it all together. We put it all together, the comprehensive analytics, the DEI plan, safe environment, access to resources. It's really what's needed to connect strategy with tactics. And that's what keeps things, front of mind. You want to keep DEI front of mind like every other business priority so that it becomes part and parcel of the fabric of your organization. And that's how you will really succeed. So with that, we've covered a lot of ground here. And it concludes really our series on the 3 Ps. Again, remember, you can watch all of the recordings of our events, including this 4-part series at ouroffice.io/events. Meanwhile, please don't hesitate to email us at dei@ouroffice.io if you have any questions or want to talk about your specific situation and DEI efforts. We offer free advisement sessions to help wherever we can. And I also want to just mention that we do have an upcoming webinar on November 3rd. It's on it's been very popular already. We have a lot of signups, so sign up soon. So we still have room for you. It's on psychological safety, which is really important. I'm talking with Sandy Harvey, who is an expert in this, and it is going to be an exciting conversation. Now, I'd like to offer some time here to see if there's any questions that we have. Let me look quickly. We only have a couple of minutes, so I'm going to quickly look on the chat and see if there's any questions. So one question is it hard to use the platform? Do you need special IT skills? It's a great question. We absolutely don't need any special skills. You are actually able to use it like many other apps they use. It's very self-explanatory. We routinely test this by just giving the tool to people, some of our own team members, especially when we're hiring, to see how people will be able to figure it out on their own, and they always do. So of course, with customers, we train, we are there along the way, but most importantly, remember that our approach is the 3 Ps, and the platform is just 1 P. We totally understand that one of the key considerations is to provide professional guidance. So our DEI advisors that are assigned along with the platform are there to actually help guide you, or even just run the whole platform for you if that was just make things easier. So then there is another question. It says, the charts look very good. Are they created on the platform? Yes, absolutely. And what's really important is that those charts that we just showed for the hiring pipeline, for example, the female seniority level, the process and policy scoring, all of that is created just with a few clicks on the platform because the KPIs are predefined and they take the data you already have in your HCM, in your ATS, with no manipulation required on your part. We upload the data or we connect with your HCM or your ATS. The data comes in, there's no duplication of effort, and all of the data is right there with a few clicks. You can mix and match, you can just do some what ifs, you can slice and dice, or again, the DEI advisor can do all of that for you. These are excellent questions. Again, we're happy to answer any other questions. If you want to just send them to us at dei@ouroffice.io. We look forward to seeing you again, and thank you so much for tuning in today and listening to us. See you in November. Bye-bye.